Hey, what is up, guys? It is your boy Kingdom Soldier and Evan, and I'm back again with another commentary. So the last time I left off, we talked about Bebe, and that wasn't the end of my time with Bebe, but that was kind of like Bebe put me in a place where I became my own. I had redefined myself to be just like him. Okay, you gotta get down if you're gonna be talking, buddy. Okay, all right. I had redefined myself to be more like Bebe, and so I got arrested 3 times in a 2-week period. 3 times in 2 weeks, and this is what started the transition of me having to leave California. So I'm going to try to get through all 3 of those today. But before I get there, my mom's response when she divorced my stepdad, her response was she decided to put us in church. And when I say put us in church, I mean like we were at church all the time. I was an usher. I was in the choir, even though I can't sing at all. And anytime my mom went for a meeting, we were there. And my mom led the youth group at our church. So we were at church all the time. And we actually were part of what's called the church plant, and which means we were one of the first 12 members of this church, which is really cool because 2 years ago my mom went back to California and she visited the church, and they now have like 1,200 members. They let my mom come up and she talked about how the church was started. It was actually really dope. You know, I haven't been back to California since I left, and you guys will kind of get why after you hear the rest of this story. So the 3 times that I got arrested, well, what I was going to say is I went to church all the time, but I really didn't take the teachings seriously. I listened, I paid attention, I soaked it up, but I didn't take it seriously. And so the 3 times that I got arrested, somehow none of them were involving Bebe. Like Bebe wasn't a part of any of them. It was almost like I had found my own way to get in trouble, but Bebe always got away with the stuff we did. Like every car he stole, never got in trouble. Everything he stole from the store, never got in trouble. So the first time I got arrested, I started stealing calculators from the kid, like the $100 calculators. Like back then, especially, this is, well, we won't say how many years ago, but you guys can guess. And this is my freshman year of high school. So back then, freshman, maybe sophomore. I don't. Yeah, I think it was sophomore year. So back then, the big expensive calculators, you know, they're like 100-something bucks, and I would steal them, and then I would sell them to other kids who I'd probably stolen theirs too, for like $10. So I would steal a $100 calculator and I would sell it for 10 bucks. I mean, and that was my hustle. I was making good money actually doing that. So at one point, somebody snitched on me. I don't know who it was, but somebody snitched on me to the point where I got pulled out of class one day. I was actually in class, shockingly, by the police. And the police pulled me out of class. They brought me to my locker, and they said, open your locker. I opened my locker. And at that time, for some strange reason, I had like a supply of 6 calculators in my locker. So they took all 6 calculators. They took me to the office. Because the 6 calculators added up to over $500, they actually arrested me for like petty theft or something like that, because of the amount of calculators I had stolen. And so they didn't take me in though. Now this is weird. Like they arrested me, read me my rights, but released me to my mom. And so my mom had to come get me. She was furious. She was not very happy. So the second time I got arrested, and this kind of relates to what's going on in our country right now, I was at a football game. So at this football game, you know, California was really divided. Like it was really divided. And so at this football game, I was hanging out with literally 7 black kids, and I lived in I went to a predominantly white high school, and I was hanging out with, you know, the little clique, and then all the Asian kids would hang out together and all the Hispanic kids would hang out together. And so we're hanging out, and my friend Ricky used to go to the school that we were playing against. And so Ricky went up to the fence during halftime, and he's yelling across the field just joking around with the guys that he used to go to school with. He's like, yeah, we're beating you by 20 points, whatever. And, our school was stomping them. And so they were going back and forth. And a police officer went up to Ricky on the fence and said, hey, can you break it up? And Ricky's like, I'm just talking to my friends. I used to go to that school. Those are my homies. And he was like, okay, but we don't want you to start any trouble. Now, the first thing, which was weird, is that there were police officers at this high school football game. And I think it's because of the other school where they came from was like Crenshaw or something like that. Somewhere where they were scared that they were going to start a mess or something like that. And so Ricky was like, man, whatever. And so he came back to our group. So the 7 or 8 of us are talking. Bebe leaves and goes to the bathroom. My brother was in the group, Doug, BJ, Chris. We're all standing there talking, and the cops come over. A different cop comes over, and he says, hey, and Bebe's not there. So when Bebe's not there, I automatically take the role as leader. So I respond to the cop. I'm like, what's up? He's like, well, we're going to need you guys to break up this circle. And we're like, what? Why? And he says, well, your friend here was starting some trouble with the other team, and we don't want to, start anything. We don't want to see any fights or anything like that. So we're going to need you guys to return to your seats. Now, they all are looking at me. I'm looking around, and I said to the cop, I said, so what about all these other groups, all these other circles that are going on? Are you going to ask them to break up their circles? Because there's literally like probably 12 little groups, of kids. There's 12 groups of high schoolers just all in these little circles, and we're just one of them. And they were like, yeah, just you guys break your circle up, and then we'll talk to them. And I was like, how about you break their circles up first, and then you can come back to us, and we'll break up our circle. And he was like, and the whole time it was funny. He had his hand on his baton. He was like, okay, if you don't break up your circle, we're going to have to ask you to leave. So my brother, Doug, and Shay, I think, and Shay was crazy. I'm surprised Shay didn't just... Shay was known for carrying a security guard on his back while trying to fight somebody. It was bananas. But Shay and my brother and Doug, I think, decided to walk away. They were like, okay, we're going to break it up. We don't want to leave the football game. And so me... because Bebe wasn't there, me, Chris, and there was one more person, but I don't remember who the last person was. I know it was me and Chris, and Ricky. Me, Chris, and Ricky decide, and all of us are in the same gang at this time, I think. This was the first gang I was in. And so me, Chris, and Ricky we're like, man, F this. So we just start cussing at the cops, and we're like, we're out of here. So we start walking, and as we're walking, we are yelling, screaming. We are giving these cops all of the business that we can. We're not doing it in their face. Just as we're walking, we're just yelling and talking and walking, and we're walking out of the game. And so as we're walking, we cause a scene. So all these little circles, including Bebe, who had come out of the bathroom, Shay and my brother and Doug, everybody in the school basically walks up to the fence that surrounds the football field and is watching all of us walk away, yelling and screaming. And they're like, yeah, why are you kicking them out? Now the students are basically like, but they had our back at this point. They're like, why are they being kicked out? None of us are being kicked out. You know what I'm saying? And it was like, and it was everybody. It wasn't just the black kids or the Mexican kids. It was the white kids. Everybody was like, why are you guys kicking them out? And we're yelling and screaming and cussing and stuff. And one of the cops says, yeah, get out of here, you little bleep, to my friend Chris. Now, Chris made a stupid decision, but Chris decides to turn around and face the cop as if he was going to try to fight him or something. And as he turns around to say, what? Like to get up in the cop's face. And Chris was tiny. I mean, this dude was so little. He turns around. The cop literally slams him to the ground. And I hear Chris scream. I keep my hands to my side. My mom always taught me the rules. I keep my hands to my side, and all I did was turn around to see what Chris was screaming about. And a Samoan cop puts his hand in my stomach, his other hand behind my back, and flips me in the air and slams me down to the ground. And so now I'm on the ground, and I'm laying down looking at Chris, And Chris is over there, and I'm laying down, and Chris, I think, started crying or something. And I, I had dealt with the cops a couple times, so I'm just like, and I'm sitting there, and they handcuff us. Never read us our rights, never read us our Miranda rights. Took us to the car. I get back to, they take us to the station, and my mom comes in, and Chris's mom comes in. My mom says, well, what did you, what is the problem? Like, what did you lock him up for? And she says that the cop said that I attempted to assault an officer. So my mom is like, attempted to assault an officer? And I'm like, I didn't do that, Mom. I was like, all I did was turn around. My mom believes me. And so she's like, you know what? She was like, give me my son. She was like, we're going to deal with this, and we will talk to you again. And she says that to the cops. The cops release me. We go home. My brother tells the same story. My brother was at home waiting for me. Now, my brother was mad because when we left, my brother and Doug and Shay, I believe, came out behind us, and Bebe. They just came out behind us. Like, they weren't a part of our little, like, yelling and screaming. They just came out behind us. And I guess my brother had punched a tree because he was mad that he had to watch me get slammed down on the ground by the cops, and he couldn't do anything about it. It wasn't like a fight where he could jump in. And so my brother had, his hand was jacked. And my brother told my mom, same story. He said, look, they asked us to leave the game for no reason. There was a whole bunch of other groups of kids that they weren't talking to. They just picked us out of the crowd for some reason. And Anthony defended that, and then he left, and then he just turned around when Chris got slammed on the ground. I don't know what happened with Chris. Not a lot of us knew what Chris did, if he actually raised his hands to the cops. My mom didn't care about that at the time, even though Chris was one of our best friends, and his mom was one of my mom's good friends. But my mom said to me at this moment, she said, you can be Malcolm X if you want to. She said, but it's not as easy as you think it is. And I was like, okay. I was like, I didn't get in no trouble. Like, I didn't get in any trouble. Now, my mom let it go only for a week because, like, 5 days later, my brother was stopped by the police walking down the street. The cop pulled over next to him and asked him to put his hands on the hood of the car. Now, again, my mom trained me and my brother. If you're not, well, we're not even going to get into that conversation because it's way too big with what's going on in our country. But let's just say my mom trained me and my brother on being nice to the police, paying attention to their badge, all this kind of stuff, not to do anything to set them off. Because you never know what could happen if you do something stupid or say something stupid or they think you're doing something stupid. And so my brother put his hands on the car. He made sure to pay attention to the cop's badge number. He memorized it because he has a photographic memory. And he just did everything the cop said. He emptied his pockets. The cop gave him all his stuff back and released him, let him go. He told my mom. My mom grabbed a picture of me and a picture of my brother. She cut him out. She took him to the police station. She told me and my brother to sit down. She walked up to the cops and she said, why was my son pulled over today? And the cop said, who's your son? And she said, my son Alex is sitting right over there. Said, Alex, get up here. So my brother walks up, and she said, officer badge number, blah, 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 stopped him on the street on the way to Heritage Park, and yada, yada, yada. And the cop was like, well, and before asking for the other cop, before getting the badge, he could have said, I don't know. His exact words to my mom were, well, look at him. So basically, his explanation was that because of how my brother looked, because of how he dressed, the cop should have pulled him over, should have been suspicious that he was doing something wrong. Now, my brother, different from me, my brother, even though he was in our gang, he didn't really participate. He just was a part of it, was a basketball player, great student, was a part of 100 Black Men, which was this cool little organization of mentors down in California. He was a better kid than I was. And my mom slammed down a picture of me and a picture of my brother. She said, if either of these two boys find their way to this place again without just cause, she was like, my brother is a lawyer in Seattle, and my uncle was a lawyer for Gordon Thomas, Honeywell, Malanka, Peterson, and Daheim, one of the largest firms in Seattle. And she said, my brother is a lawyer in Seattle. I will have him come down here, and we will sue you. Now, this was at a time where if that would have happened today, what happened to me and my brother, like especially what happened to me, we probably would have sought some type of restitution or something, because these days, when you get wrongfully accused of something, you actually say that you got wrongfully accused. Back then, you just tried to avoid trouble, so we didn't really say anything about it. When we went to court for my attempted assault on an officer, which is what they called it was all sharpied out. The officer didn't show up, and it basically they dropped it immediately. They were like, "Yeah, we're just gonna drop this." So basically, I got slammed on the ground by the police, not read my Miranda rights, thrown in the back of the car, taken to jail, and the police had no punishment for it, no penalty. So it was like, all right. So, but we were just happy that I wasn't going to jail, that I was off. So we just went home. So I don't have enough time to tell you the other couple of times I got arrested. But I did. I got arrested another time within this 2 week window. The last time I got arrested, and basically that led to me leaving California. And so I'll tell you guys about that in the next episode. During all of this, I was still going to church all the time, listening, soaking it in, but not behaving differently as a result. My behavior was not in any way, shape, or form modified. My mind was not necessarily renewed. I was just being me, but I was soaking up the teachings that I was getting at church. So in the next episode, hopefully I can cover why I had to leave California, basically got kicked out, and how I ended up in Washington State. And then we start to get into the good stuff, you know, the new Anthony. This is your boy, Kingdom Soldier. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.